Well, the patience is basically learning a whole new system of doing something that you've never done before. And when you learn how to do that, it's very interesting. And when you start seeing what you're really capable of doing, that in itself is pretty cool. When you're able to hit a quarter at 100 yards and you've never done that, I mean, that starts building confidence on the things that you can do with patience and understanding. With that being said, in Danny's job, he's been entry and sniping it. When I'm negotiating in his favor. Meaning that a simple question I might be is like, hey, Bobby, look, Bobby being my person inside. It's like, look, man, we want to end this peacefully. Just turn the light off around, let me know it's okay. That's it, right? Well, when that light comes on, he now has an understanding, one, where he may be, or number two, he may be able to see something, which is a good thing. And that helps him being able to achieve the goal of all of us bringing out somebody that's in a crisis. He knew that he was going to jail. He had a daughter, a child at the time, like baby. And he was talking about her a little bit, and we tried to work that into the picture of like, most people think that when you go to jail, life's over. But in reality, life's over if you choose for it to be over. There are other options that you have when you're in jail. It's what you make of it. You got to work for it, but you can do it.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community. And now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree, and we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal.
And we can learn from those mistakes.
And together we can bridge the divide.
The Negotiator. The task of a negotiator has been a staple in movie and TV for decades, but it often doesn't show the true behind-the-scenes patience and endless mind games to gain rapport and just hopefully diffuse the situation, and everybody goes home. That isn't always the case. The movies don't go into the trauma. They don't go into the hearing of someone saying their last words or take their last breath. Since NYPD Detective Harvey Schlossberg recognized the need for a new approach to dealing with the crisis with hostages in 1972, he worked on the Son of Sam case. He instituted a psychological principle in police work that included psych screening and the use of hypnosis in suspect and witness interviews. He was a trailblazer. The first hostage negotiation teams were created as elements of SWAT. Today we have on our very own SWAT negotiator. He's been a member of Dallas PD since 1993. Yes, 1993. It's back when the Cowboys were good. He hired on with Dallas PD in 1985. He's worked Northwest Patrol. He did a tour in Mounted Unit, and he remains with Dallas SWAT today. The ATO is very happy to sit down with JD Byas of Dallas SWAT. JD, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is Joe King. I'm here with Danny Canetti. He's actually sitting in today, and we have a very special guest co-host all the way from New York, Sarah Ginsburg. Sarah, thank you for coming on. There's a story behind you, and maybe one day we'll tell, but you reached out to us as a fan of the podcast, and you want to help the Assist the Officer Foundation and support the podcast and ATO, and you're here to sit in with us this episode. Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you for having me.
All right, JD, you ready to get into this?
Go for it.
All right. What part of Texas were you born?
I was actually born in Fort Worth.
Okay, Cowtown. When did you move out of there, and where'd you go?
I think I was around 6. I was age 6 when I moved up there, or moved out from Texas,
Okay.
and then ended up moving to Ohio, to a small suburb outside of Ohio, Cleveland.
Okay, how long did you stay there?
Well, I was pretty much raised there, and then from that point, I came back to Texas when I was in my early, or maybe mid-20s.
Okay. When did you decide to get into law enforcement, though?
Actually, it's kind of funny because I wanted to be a park ranger,
Okay.
and I wanted to work in the park systems and national parks and things like that. And I had heard back then that one of the biggest things was they were looking for law enforcement, or they were looking for teachers.
Okay.
Those were like things that they would look for. So I went with law enforcement, thinking, okay, I could do law enforcement and do some things there.
By then, you had moved back to Texas?
No,
Okay.
no, I was.
So you were interested before you got back to Texas?
Right,
Okay.
right. Probably at about age 20.
Okay.
Yeah, it was about age 20. I started doing store detective work.
Okay. Like a
Loss prevention,
Yeah,
dressed
yeah.
in plain clothes, catching shoplifters, things like that. And that in itself, I think, was basically a good stepping stone. I mean, you get to see anybody and everybody steals.
Yeah, yeah, and you have interaction with people, and you get to understand, and you actually you saw the criminal side of people.
Sure.
And a lot of people, I would imagine, when it comes to shoplifting, they're just opportunists. They're not actually there to go in and steal shit. They just see
Doing
an
it for some
opportunity.
thrill.
Yeah, they do it for a thrill. They just see something. I kind of want to take that with me.
But what's interesting is that, I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. Whether you're a police officer, someone from the city council, a nun,
Yeah.
people in wheelchairs, and then you have your professionals. And your professionals are just crazy the way they come up with how to steal stuff. And it drives, that in itself was a learning process.
I worked at at a Sam's at an extra job, and I was standing near the front. My old partner John Valdez, shout out John, he was relieving me that day. We just got there, and this guy, he was in a suit, and they had watched him steal some stuff, or he ate some stuff off the rack way back in the back of the store, and they were just waiting for him to check out. So he saw us up there talking with the loss prevention guy, and we were just waiting on him. And seeing this guy, he was terrorized. As that line got closer, we were going to let him check out to what he was actually going to buy, and then we were going to hook him up. But the look on his face, and I remember John and I were sitting there laughing, going, "Look at that son of a bitch." Look at his face, because he was just, he knew we knew,
Right?
And it was hilarious because this guy, he looked like he could be a CEO. It was funny.
Getting a little off topic though, but what year was the Super Bowl here? 2010?
What? Oh,
The Super Bowl?
Yeah, it's 2010, right?
Was it
Yeah.
2010?
Yeah.
So I'm working, this was back before SWAT, obviously, but I was at Southeast, but working extra job at North Park and all the craziness that
Oh,
went
my
with
gosh,
it.
yes,
So
yes.
I get a call from a security guard at one of the stores, I won't say what store, saying, hey, we got a shoplifter, and, we're going to have to do something with them. So I go down there. This girl's not talking. She's like 14 years old, won't talk. We can tell she speaks a different language as well. Come to find out, and I won't say what country, but she's the daughter of a president's country.
Wow.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to go to the Super Bowl. Her whole family went, and she wanted to go shopping at the mall. And her bodyguards took her there, and she somehow ditched her bodyguards and escaped them, and was caught shoplifting in this store. And the store and the security are like, "Oh, I think you should arrest her." I'm like, "Hey, here's a deal. We're gonna make a phone call. You can say whatever you want to her, but we're getting her out of here and handing her back over." And
Yeah. No, if y'all push for it, somebody probably would have bought that North Park Mall right then and there, and you fired everybody.
Right, right.
Them out.
yeah, but obviously had enough money to probably buy most of the store that
yes.
then caught shoplifting.
Yeah.
Wow. So you got into law enforcement. You started off the loss prevention, and you decided to get into law enforcement. Where did you apply?
So I applied probably about 10 different places up in the Ohio.
And what year was that?
Oh man, that'd probably be like in the early 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because you hired on here in '85.
Right.
Okay. When you applied for Dallas, what was that process like? And did you already have other applications out with other places?
I had other applications around. Nothing was solid though, and I'm sure it's in bigger cities. It's probably the same, but when they're hiring like the suburbs, when they're hiring like 2 people, you'll get like 300 people showing up for that. And if you ain't in the top 5 just on the testing, chances are you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
Right. So I had applied for like Cleveland, and they had a couple of openings there, and there were about 400 people that applied, and it was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Dallas, though, at that time, though, what was their hiring push like? They
were hiring a lot of people.
Really?
So I got word through my sister who was down here, and she said Dallas is hiring. I said, well, give it a try. So came down here, did all the processing for it. They were pretty good. I don't know how they are now, but back then they'd try and get everything done within one day, so that the only thing you'd really have to come back for is like the psych and the review board.
Okay.
Which I did, and then.
But you were still living in
Cleveland,
Ohio, and
outside of Cleveland.
And once you got the job, and
I moved down.
'85, you came down here.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So you hired on in '85.
Mm-hmm.
What month was it?
August.
Oh, so right in the heat when you come out there in the.
Yeah, when I drove in, and you got to remember that because I was born down here, we still had family down here.
Yeah.
So I was coming back from Ohio to Texas my whole life, either driving, flying. So getting down wasn't, anything really crazy. But I remember driving in with the truck, the moving truck. I looked up. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, and the temperature was like 104. I said, "Yeah, not much has changed."
Yeah. And you're about to put on a dark uniform.
Right.
So when you got, when you were in the academy, we're going to get into some events that happened a few years later after you hired on,
Sure.
right? But during the '80s, what was the feel in the department, and what did Dallas PD? How did that look to you from the outside?
Well, I can tell you that generally, I think as I look back now on that going through the academy, they had just had an officer that had been killed in the line of duty prior to me getting down here, and it was pretty graphic the way I remember it. But I didn't know about it until I got into the academy.
Do you remember who it was?
Blair,
and the circumstances?
Gary Briller. He was, I think he was killed on a traffic stop, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And that was, I think, in March. Okay. And I didn't start the academy until August. Mm-hmm. And the only reason why I remember that is because I turned 25 when I was in the academy. But at that time, you have this brand new world in front of you, and, I'm not really recognizing, at that time, I'm just going through the academy. I just want to make it, right? It wasn't until later on that you start opening your eyes and you start seeing the community and the things that go on around it.
So how did that make you feel whenever you were aware that an officer had gotten killed in Dallas, and then you were starting the academy 4 or 5 months later?
Right.
Were you aware of that death, and how did that make you feel? If you can remember how you felt when you were young, did that maybe give you a second thought on it, or?
Not really a second thought. I think back then it was more of, okay, this is a possibility,
Yeah.
But I'd probably have to admit that I was so focused of just trying to get through the academy, I blocked everything else out because I just wanted to do well in the academy and get through it. And so
So early on you were compartmentalizing things?
Probably, yeah. Actually,
like
you're
everybody.
probably right. Just wanted to get home, study,
Yeah.
eat, go to sleep, wake up,
How long was the academy back then?
Yeah, that's a different story compared to where they are now.
Yeah.
It was 17 or 18 weeks.
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, 17 or 18 weeks. And I was just like, and I thought that was a long time.
How long was yours, Joe?
It was almost 9 months.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I started in January and I graduated in August. So, wow.
I was already on the street by December.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the field training like back then?
I had some really good trainers. I remember them to this day, and I thought each one brought a really good aspect of it. Because in the training, I think they still do it. You do 6 weeks on days, 6 weeks on evenings, 6 weeks on deep nights, and so the trainers that I had were all pretty good on their watches.
I think it's 7-7-7. So
Yeah.
7 weeks in 3 different phases, and
Yes.
then you go back for 3 weeks for your
Yes.
fourth phase.
Yes,
so it's a total
yes.
of 24 weeks.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you were at Northwest, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How long were you out on the streets before you got up to mounted?
So I had heard through the grapevine that in order to get to mounted, number one, we had corporals, but not senior corporals.
Yeah.
Corporals was just a rank, and after 5 years, it
was automatic.
Boom, it was
You
automatic.
grandfathered in. Yeah.
Right. So we didn't have senior corporals. But I had heard that it takes about 5 years to 6 years to get over there. So the minute I got off of Little T, the next day I put my letter in, and it took about 6 years to get there.
For the listener that are non-police, can you describe what Little T is?
Little T is basically once you get done, you ride with a partner who is not evaluating you. You work as a two-man, and you handle the call load just like you were a regular officer. The only thing that the senior officer in the car is just to kind of make sure that you got it, more or less.
Yeah, as long as they're that much senior to you. Usually you're riding with someone who's like only 3 or 4 months
Yes.
on more than you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because real senior guys don't want to ride with someone that rookie. So
Yes.
they got 2 knuckleheads in the car just
Yeah.
wrecking
Yeah.
shop.
Yeah. You're right.
That's real
And
common.
it's a great time.
Yeah, it is.
I learned more on Little T, and then that's when my old partner John and I, my second week of Little T, Valdez and I partnered up, and it just we stayed together until I got with Pat. But that's
And it's funny how you can learn from someone that rookie too. Still, like
Sure.
I still remember my partner on Little T was Jeremiah Torres.
yeah,
He
I
had been
love
on
him.
4 or 5 months longer than me, but that guy knew how to talk to people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He knew how to talk to, and he ended up doing a gang liaison and all that stuff. But I learned more about talking to people from him than probably anyone else.
Yeah.
Jeremiah, he's such a good dude. God, I like that. I miss that guy. We actually were texting earlier this year. I like him.
Yeah.
So you're out there at Northwest, and I want to fast forward to the year of 1988. And we talked about it with Lance Crawford. He hired on in 1988.
Right.
And we had, in a calendar year, we had 7 officers were killed in line of duty, or Sandell and Fleming. They had a car wreck and they died. Did you know any of the officers that personally that were killed?
Well, a couple of them. So, like, John Chase was actually the academy class ahead of me.
Okay.
So I knew of him. Not like we hung out or anything. It's just, I knew who he was in that. That was a rough one. The other one was James Joe, or Joe James. He was a officer, and then went to crime scene. So he would come out and do the fingerprints and things
Process
like
the
that.
scene,
Process the scene and all that. And I will tell you something about him. He had to be the classiest dresser I have ever seen in my
Really?
life. That guy could wear a 3-piece suit and dust an entire house and not get one speck on him. And it was crazy to watch him. Had the most perfect hair, and I'm like, God dang! I mean, you got to be a model. You can't.
Right,
It was crazy. Yeah.
What was his incident? Will you tell the listener if you remember?
He was at home he lived in an apartment complex. he got a call that someone was breaking into cars. So he went out there to go look for the guy, and he confronted one, and another one came up behind him and killed him. Yeah.
88 was rough, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And the feel of the city, and there was a lot of anti-police rhetoric back then in Chase. That was
Right.
There was a lot of that when he died. We mentioned that already. What was the feel of the city in the department with that kind of with losing that many officers? What were y'all?
Well,
thinking?
you got to think about it. It just wasn't Dallas.
Yeah.
So we lost 7, I think. The entire Metroplex lost 12 because we lost some from Fort Worth, Arlington, and that. So that was a pretty heavy year going through that. Now that I got a little time on 3 years or so, I'm starting to realize things. They did a mandatory two-man patrol that was brought into play. So everybody's riding two-man whether you wanted to or not. They found you. You didn't go out by yourself. And I think the morale's definitely down. Definitely down. When you're losing 12 officers total.
Yeah.
It's just not Dallas. It's affecting the whole Metroplex.
Did y'all feel under attack?
I think to some degree there was some animosity there, if that's the right word I want to use. Yeah, to some degree. But
how could you not? I mean, really?
Yeah, and you can't. But there's one thing, and I'll tell you what: the street police or the street cop, the beat cop, whatever you want to call them, those guys have a hell of a job.
Yeah,
without a doubt, because they get out there and they're going from call to call to call, trying to figure out what they're going to do, and when SWAT shows up, man, we got our stuff, right?
Yeah.
But back then you're driving around, you're just doing your job, you're just going out from call to call,
and it could be an up and down day.
Every day,
every day of the week.
Yeah,
you can go from talking to somebody about a stolen bike to driving up on a shooting.
I've been to locations during that time period. I was at a location where I pulled a squad car in front of a resident. I'll call it that, a resident,
okay.
And was told that I needed to use the back entrance of the house. They didn't want the squad cars up in front.
Was it nice enough?
Yeah,
Okay.
it would be like all over the neighborhood, And the next call would be in the projects, where you open the door and you're looking at some poverty, and they just love you to death. And that was a great Northwest back then. You could go from one call to another and have that as your time. You go one, and you really look at them and go like, really? And you go to another one where you think something else, and it's a very eye-opening experience.
You get so much thrown at you in so many different aspects of social life, not just policing, but just just how people live at just different levels of wealth, poverty, education, right?
Mm-hmm.
When did you decide to go to mounted? You said you got a bug in your ear. How long it's going to take? How did that process go, and how long had mounted been going on when you got over there?
Mounted, if I'm not mistaken, we were in the 70s.
Okay.
They started around in the 70s. And the neat thing about that was because I knew it would take a long time to get there, I knew that you wanted to have time. You didn't want to go over as a young officer. You wanted to have some time because it's a slower pace of what you do. I actually never rode a horse, but I'm a big animal lover. So I said, you know what? Let's go try this out and see what it's like. I mean, it should be pretty cool, right? So I finally got selected to go there, went there. It is, back then, I'm sure it is. I don't know how much it's changed. But back then, it was the hardest school to get through.
Yeah.
The hardest school to get through. It was long and beat up. And, the horses are unforgiving. However, I will tell you that to this day, that is a highlight of my career.
Really?
And there's been several times I've thought about going back. I didn't. The issue was, even though I had 5 years on, having you want to go over there when you got like 15, 16 years, so that you're not chasing everybody. You know, I'm not saying you're not police. You just have a different responsibility.
Yeah, you're really a support for patrol.
Yeah.
You're supplementing patrol.
Exactly. Yeah, and you know, you're trying to help them where you're doing other things. I mean, I chased a stolen car on my horse. I mean, I drew down on somebody in the middle of downtown
On a horse.
On a horse, and had them sprawled out on the ground. And my cover was 2 other Mounties. When I said I got someone on the ground, the dispatch is going like, okay, where are they running? I said, no, they're on the ground. And I heard my other 2 guys coming, and it was the neatest thing because they're on the radio. They're going like, we're en route. And,
I love it.
And I'm like, man, you can't make this up. You cannot make this up. And of course, just like out of the movies, Out of the Horizon, you know, they come up over the hill and they get down there, and we got all this guy and another guy over here, and worked a major accident. Never got off my horse. And you can still do police work, you know, and the training back then was just crazy because for never riding a horse and doing the things I did, I can't beat it.
Well, that probably it's like somebody going to a rookie starting and going to the range that never fired a handgun. They don't have any bad habits to break.
Oh
right?
yeah.
So that probably helped you a lot.
Yes,
Your
yes.
instructors they'd teach you how they wanted to teach you, and you didn't know any better.
You didn't. I mean,
so how long? I heard motors and mounted are probably some of the hardest training that we have.
Yeah,
and,
without a doubt.
and still to this day.
Yeah.
Wow. How big was the mounted unit back then when you started?
We had 18 horses.
Oh.
And then when you included the barn manager and the sergeants, we were up to 21. So when we showed up, there was a line. Yeah, we could be
Forced to be reckoned with.
Yes. You could be very easy. During the Cowboy Parade in '93, that was one of my big tests.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Were you in the middle of that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about that with the commander and Claggett. And, And and they were praising the mounted unit and how it shined that day.
Yeah.
What role can you talk about what you did that day and how it went for you?
Oh my God, that was crazy because I was like on little T, even on horses, because you know they want you to ride with someone that's got more time. Well, my assignment was with the instructor, Tom Hall. Shout out to him, whatever you call it, you know, hashtag whatever. I don't know.
We'll do both. Hashtag and shout out.
Yeah, but Tom Hall, he was a solid trainer. He had changed up the training when he first came over. He taught me a lot. In reality, a lot of the stuff that he taught, I used when I came over to SWAT, the discipline and some of that stuff. But he was my partner, and he was on one side, and I was on the other because the Corvettes were all down the middle.
Corvettes.
Yeah, they were all Corvettes, and there was no railing, there was no anything. It was just people lined up at the side. And as soon as we came up from, and I think it's Industrial that goes up into Maine, someplace over there. But you know, which was a street. When we went up, it was just like mob city.
Yeah.
I was like, oh crap. And so as we started walking, we saw it start falling in, and they just started surrounding all the cars and that. The players had their wives and kids, and they were getting scared, and it was kind of starting chaos. Not like riots, just massive people, and closing in. And so I started watching the other horses, what they were doing. And then I looked over to my trainer. My trainer, he was doing it, and it was like a spin to clear you use a technique to clear.
Can you
people.
describe what that technique is?
Basically, is you give your horse a cue, which is using your horse will bend around your leg. So when you push into the side of it and you bend it, the horse will want to go that way.
Okay.
Go into the bend.
Pivot around your leg.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Excellent. Pivot. So I saw him doing some pivots, and my horse, Wild Bill, was kind of acting up, and new rider, so the horse knows you're nervous. He can feel it. He's nervous. So I'm trying to make sure everything's right and trying to do it all proper. And I look over and old Tom Hall, man, he was moving people left and right, and I go like, oh, it's one of those games. Yeah, okay. Now I felt a lot better, so now I start doing my thing, and we start making like a wedge, clearing people off the vehicles and stuff like that. And it's crazy, even in the middle of a chaos like that, because one of them caught on fire.
Yeah, they said the confetti caught the catalytic converter on the Corvette. Yeah,
I think it was I think it was Troy Aikman with Monty Peterson. Another shout out to him. He was up in the front. Monty Peterson was doing his thing, and something happened. And I think Troy said something like, "Is your horse going to be okay?" And Monty's horse like stumbled or something, and the horse hit his head on the car, and then came back up. And he goes, "He's fine."
He didn't shake it off.
Yeah, it didn't even shake him at all or anything. And then
they're so powerful.
Oh my God! Well, and they've changed the dynamics of how they use the horses now, and I don't want to get too far off from that because I don't know the reasoning or it. And they're probably very comfortable with it. But our horses back then were tall, lean. They didn't have a lot of mass to them, but you can move them around very agile, very, very easily. But I do remember going down, I was trying to clear some people off because we were starting to take side roads, side streets to get out of that mob.
Yeah.
And we were clearing off, and I remember that I looked over and some kid had taken a pin and just took it and shoved it into the side of the flank of the horse, like his rib cage. And when he did that, he buckled over to the left, and his left leg actually sat on a Corvette and shattered the whole back of it. And then we got back up. God. And then we kept going. But what was really neat, two ladies were over there and saw what happened. And they literally went after this
Whip
kid.
his ass. Good.
Yeah. And they went after, don't care about me.
Yeah.
They said, don't ever do that
Don't
to
hurt
a
the
horse.
animal.
Wow,
Yeah.
bam, bam, bam. And I'm I didn't even have to look back because I didn't want to see what was going on, but they took care of it. And then, after it was all said and done, the guy from the Corvette goes, look, he goes, thank you so much. He goes, I am not complaining, all this and blah, blah, blah. I said, he goes, yeah, but your horse sat in my car, it shattered. I got to have at least some type of report for insurance.
Right.
And I went like, I can do that. Do that, And I always used to write my tickets or my reports is Officer J.D. Byas and Officer Wild Bill.
Wild Bill, that's awesome. That is so
And
great.
that was on all my reports. So, anyways. Yeah.
No, man, I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't even have that in my lineup. I was going to get into the Cowboy Parade, but I didn't realize how deeply you were involved in that. When that was all done, we talked about it. You and your horse just spent, right?
Well, you don't spend because you're talking about a 1,500-pound animal.
Yeah.
It's you want to help people understand they need to move away from wherever they're at.
Give them equine therapy to.
Yeah, you just want to give them a little applied pressure to say you need to go this way. You don't want to run over people per se.
Yeah, you kill them.
You can kill someone, right? Jose Mendez, another shout out, hashtag whatever. Jose Mendez. A motor jockey. They jumped a motor jockey, and they didn't assault him. They just pushed his bike over, and every time he tried to get up, they'd push it back down again. And so Jose got in there, and he says, "You trying to get your bike up?" He goes, "Yeah, they won't let me." He goes, "Hold on." He put his horse in a full spin, and that thing just went right around. Just kept going around the motor jockey until the motor jockey was able to get up. And he goes, "You got it?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm good." Then you go to the next guy. And it was crazy.
And that was all done just improvising.
There was there was no. I mean, all the mountie guys back then. It's just like any other job. Even in SWAT, that sometimes you got to improvise and make it happen. And that's what that's what we were all doing. We were just improvising, trying to make it work. Just trying to break away, get away.
You're fighting for your life too, and then also keeping everybody there safe.
Yeah, and it's different. And it was a thing that you got these players here that are getting worried. We'd heard later on that and I'll be careful I say this because I don't want to offend anybody, but the majority of the people were there for the parade.
Yeah. celebration.
But you got thugs. I can say that. You got
there's antagonists. There's always
you've got a
agitators there.
group of a core of people that just want to cause chaos. They're stealing jewelry, watches. They're trying to get all the stuff off these players and that.
And the officers, I heard too.
And the officers are trying to take their, you've lost not guns, but you've lost batons, you've lost things like that, and you still have SWAT guys walking along the side trying to help, and they're fighting now, so that's a whole different ball game. So, excuse me, it's a lot easier to be on top and see everything.
Yeah.
Versus being on the ground and being in the middle of it. I mean, I thought I was okay.
Yeah, they were like in a mosh pit trying to worm their way through it, and you were like overseeing it. And
yeah, we can see.
I can't imagine that. I wish y'all had body cams. Well, it's probably a good thing you didn't. But I would, just as far as the view y'all had of what you were seeing from your height up there, and man, it's pretty incredible.
If you do your homework, there's a picture of Chief Brown.
Okay.
When he was a sergeant in SWAT.
Oh, I did see that.
And it's by McDonald's, which is downtown. There's a hot spot there, and for some reason they just always want to get around that area there. And there was an issue down there where a couple of SWAT guys were trying to effect arrest, and a mob was getting on them and that. And myself and a couple of other guys came in and cleared it up for them.
Yeah, I did see. I saw that pic actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, may have to post that one whenever we release it. It's a good pic.
Yeah, it is.
There's not many pics considering of the. There's a lot of pictures of the overview of that thing.
Right.
And we've seen the night and day from the first parade to the next year, the second.
Oh my
parade.
gosh!
It literally was like, were you part of the second parade?
All three of them.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
95. I don't even remember 95 as much.
In 95, I was walking.
Oh, okay.
I was on the ground, which
you were in SWAT.
Yeah, I was. I'd rather have been on horse.
Yeah,
because when I came up, I went, no, I want to be on horse. I don't like this being on the ground.
Yeah, 95 went. But in 94, you were the second one. You were on the horse still.
No, I came over. Yeah,
okay.
I was already in SWAT. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Speaking of going into SWAT, how did that happen? You were in the mountain. You just decided I wanted to.
Yeah. I was looking for a change. I think I was going through some rough things, and you're just trying to figure out a way how to get how to cope with stuff. And I remember, and Danny's probably going to look at me and go like, "What are you, crazy? That's how it happened?" He goes, "Jesus Christ," because back then Mounted was actually part of the same organizational chart.
Tactical, yeah.
It was with SWAT, and it was a tactical unit, which would be horses, canine bombs, helicopters. I'm forgetting somebody else. There's a couple of others. Traffic. But the thing about it that was interesting back then was I was walking, it was a Thursday, and I was walking out the door and I saw a sergeant. I had heard that SWAT had an opening, so I saw a sergeant and I looked at Joe Denemy was his name. Shout out. As I'm walking out, I see Sarge, and I said, "Hey, Sarge, I hear you have an opening." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You interested?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "We're looking for someone to slam doors." Because back then, nowadays they got all these kind of things they can do to breach a door.
Back then it was just brute force.
It was just hitting the door, right? Which we still got some guys that can do it with no problem at all. But back then I looked at him and I went, "I can do that." And he goes, "Okay." He goes, "Well, you got to take a physical fitness test." Well, 3 or 4 months prior to that, the SWAT team was actually doing their physical fitness test for them, and they asked if anybody in Mounted wanted to do it, try and do it. I said, "Sure, sure, why not? Try something different, right?" So I tried out, passed everything, because we were just new, we were trying it out. Our standards was a little lower than what the SWAT team was. So when he goes, "Well, you have to be at least able to get whatever percentage it was to be interviewed." And I said, "I passed everything." He goes, "Oh, good." He goes, "Well, let me talk to a couple of guys and we'll get back to you." And I was in SWAT Sunday.
Wow.
They didn't even make you take a test on a piece of paper, like circle the one that is a rifle.
No.
Wow.
No, it was that quick. And I remember they called me because I had to meet the whole team It wasn't like nowadays where you go. I met the team that I was going to, and they were allowed to ask whatever questions within reason.
There we go. So who was in the room?
Oh, no, I'm not going to get.
Who were the big boys in the room who were running that?
Well,
team?
you had at that time you had John Nichols, who interestingly went to Mounted.
Okay.
You had Dale. I think Dale was there.
Hack.
Yeah, Hack.
Dale Hack.
Yeah, Dale Hackbart. You had Will Mixon. You had
Oh, that's right, Mixon.
Wayne Bass, Richard Pace. I think Rob was Bodie. I don't know if Bodie came after. Yeah, I think Bodie came after John, because John Nichols was elite. And I know I'm forgetting somebody to have the team.
Tim?
No, Tim was in a different unit.
Okay. So what unit was this?
E unit. Yeah, we were the 880s back then. So for those that don't know, the SWAT team's divided up into like 4 teams, and I was with the 80s. They call them the 80s, and so I was with the 80s, and yeah, and that's. I sat in front of them. They asked me questions and said, "Okay." Raul Duarte. Sorry, he's the one.
Duarte, yeah.
Yeah. And
Who was the supervisor?
Joe Denemy.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's been talked about a lot in
Yeah.
a lot of episodes, and I've a lot of people have suggested him come on.
Yeah.
He's heard nothing but good things.
Yeah. Yeah, he was good. And so I interviewed with him, and he called me Sunday and said, "Hey, welcome to SWAT." And the first thing I said was, "I didn't tell my horse." I go,
Yeah, you gotta break up a wild
that was the
boar.
first thing I said was, "I haven't told my horse yet." I said, "This is going to be strange." He goes, "Well, you got a week to tell him."
Oh, man.
And so I went and had a long talk. And believe it or not, the craziest thing is that my horse had never kicked me. He threw me off a couple times, but never kicked me or bit me or anything. And that last week, he kicked me.
Because leaving it, yeah. So,
Because we had a talk. And that was,
Or did he kick you because he wanted you to leave?
yeah,
yeah,
well, that
yeah,
could be
yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, he's like, "Get off me!" Yeah, that could have been it. I never thought about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Always look on the positive side.
hoofing the ass out the door.
Yeah,
You
it was crazy. I go, "You're mad, aren't you?" He goes, "Yeah."
So would you? I mean, that macho SWAT culture, especially back then, what was that like?
So I look at it today versus how I was back then, and I see it even today. You come over, you learn things, and you start to get this feeling, which is no different realistically than being in patrol. Is it fair to say that a patrol officer you need at least 5 years to understand what's going on?
You mean you're talking about just in general feeling like the rookie or the new
Yeah.
guy all the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as a new person, and no matter what you're at, and where I'm going with this is, I look back now and go like, yeah, I think I was immature in a lot of stuff. Even though I was being trained in a lot of different stuff, I was okay or started learning about things. And it isn't until you get older that you start learning, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Maybe I need to do this. Maybe I do that. And I still see it, and I see it today with the kids the guys that we got now. The young ones that are coming in, and I'm watching that like Danny himself here, right? He's got time on now, so he's becoming one of the senior guys and carries himself as a senior guy, and that's no pun intended. He carries himself as a senior guy. But when you're new, you're new. Doesn't matter what you are, right?
Yeah.
It takes time to build that up, figure out where you belong, what you should be doing, and then you get to that point where people start looking for you and go to you. So I was probably a little more immature back then.
Well, even in the Southeast when I was young, luckily I had a group of veteran officers that would keep me in line, but I was still very immature. Hell, by the time I met Danny, I was kind of older guy, and I understand. I see a huge difference, even just patience. Patience, you got to have so much patience with this job and everything. And I would imagine you probably learned a lot of patience with
The horses.
the horses. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you start off being a negotiator right away for your squad?
No, actually.
So you're slamming first, I know that.
yeah,
but we all have lots of jobs here.
Right.
So what else were you doing?
So I did slamming for quite a bit, and then you earn your way up and down up the line to figure out where they want to put you. And
I will say this for you, sir, and everyone else, that slammer isn't necessarily a specialty. It's one of those things that all the new guys have to do as part of learning the job and getting that experience of being at that breach.
yeah, and it gets to a point where if you got a good guy that's slamming, you want to be a one-hit wonder. You want to hit that door on the first hit and get it open. And that's, as a slammer, it doesn't matter when you slam, that's the one you want. You want to be the one-hit wonder. So that if you're a one-hit wonder, they usually know you'll get it on the first one. But I did that for a while, and then they pegged me for a sniper. And I was like, okay. Back then, they just say, you're sniping. They may ask you. But I was like, sure. Don't know anything about it. And started that.
Do you feel your patience, your natural patience that and now we're going to get into negotiation, but to be a negotiator, that's like some of the most ultimate patience, right? In a profession. You had to learn it with a horse, and horses are so empathic, and I would imagine that's how you evolved through your career and as a person, as a professional, as a sniper. Can you describe that patience that takes?
Well, the patience is basically, learning a whole new system of doing something that you've never done before. And when you learn how to do that, it's very interesting. And when you start seeing what you're really capable of doing, that in itself is pretty cool. When you're able to hit a quarter at 100 yards, and you've never done that, I mean, that builds a lot. That starts building confidence on the things that you can do with patience and understanding. And there again, back then, I had some really good trainers.
Who were some of them?
Well, the overall person was Sergeant Robert Newton. We knew stuff. When I would go to a sniper school, we knew more stuff about things that were going on in sniping than I would have known, because they'd be talking about this and this, and somebody goes like, well, we don't do that. I'm like, yeah, we do, and we learned it from this guy and this guy. So back then we had a heck of a crew that were senior guys that really were able to get me into doing well.
How big was the sniper? How long had the sniper program been going on before you got there?
Well, SWAT, if I'm not mistaken, was developed, came into in the late 60s.
The 60s, yeah.
Late 60s. So that is one thing that kind of ties in with the negotiations, because back then, our forefathers, when they were coming up with this, they had the idea that they wanted to be self-contained. And in being self-contained, they wanted everybody to be in the group. No outsourcing, which would mean you're not getting somebody else outside the group to come in and do a job in the group, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which you still have in some of these smaller agencies. Like
Right.
a patrol guy may be a sniper and get called in for a SWAT operation.
Exactly.
And that's all he does is the sniping.
Right, absolutely.
Same goes for negotiations.
Negotiations,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, speaking of negotiations, I want to get into that. Our guest here, sir, she actually wanted to have the topic of negotiations. She sent me several topics along with other fans across the country and also world.
You're the reason I have to be here this morning with Shady then, huh?
Yeah. Hey. So one of them was The Negotiator. And I've seen that movie, The Negotiator, with Spacey and Samuel L. Jackson. I'm sure you have too.
Yes.
What? Just out of curiosity, what did you think of that movie?
It's a movie.
Okay.
I love it.
Yeah,
it's a movie.
It's entertaining.
Yeah,
but
it's a good movie.
Okay.
There are some things in there that are kind of cool, but it's a movie.
Any accuracy?
Some.
Really?
Yeah, some.
Was there some? Could you look at that movie, and with all the training you've had and all the experiences you've had, can you look at that movie and go, all right, they did a little bit of research? Could you tell or no?
I would probably say they probably had some directions in things.
Okay.
How it's, they have to make it. Let me put this. I don't want to use that term. I would say that the directors and the actors and that they have to make it entertaining one way or another.
It's
you know,
sensationalize
suspense
it,
and,
yeah.
Right. So they may take something and tweak it a little bit. The part where Kevin
Spacey, yeah.
hangs up on him, I thought that was great. And I went, okay, I like that one. That's good.
He hangs up on her.
And you end up using it. Huh?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I have used it.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't lie. I know you have.
Yeah.
I've been on and off. Yes, I know you
Yeah,
have.
but
Don't call here again.
Yeah, well, here's the thing of it. It's like there's a time and place for everything, right? And I want to be careful that I'm not encouraging anybody to do that.
Right.
It's
a feel at the moment.
It's a feel, and there's a lot of things. What works for Danny may not work for me, and I've seen that blow up in somebody's face when they tried to do something like the way I would do it, and I was like, no. I go, you're not there. Don't even try to do that, right? Yeah, I would say that, but I did like it. Yeah, I thought
that was a bad.
I looked at that and went like,
I watched it recently because I knew we were going to have you on. It's been a while since I've seen that. It's very entertaining movie.
yeah. Of course, I didn't take any money, so
Yeah, right. Yeah, no. So going into the negotiations, when you got involved, how did you get involved, and then what was it like in the unit when you got involved back then?
So I was sniping, doing my thing. Everything was nice, and then I got approached by two of the senior negotiators, and they asked me if
Who were they?
At that time, it would be Raul Duarte and Raul Marino.
Okay.
And those guys were top-notch guys.
Okay.
And they kind of pulled me aside and asked me, what do you think, would I be interested in negotiations? And I said, okay, I can do that. So I did that and started there. My lieutenant at the time, Lieutenant Owens.
Bob Owens.
Bobby.
Yep.
Bobby O. He pulled me aside and talked to me and said that they can train people to do certain things. It's very hard to find someone that can be a negotiator.
Okay.
Now that may have been a line or something, but you got to have some type of be able to connect with people. I guess that would be the term. And he said, for the team, can you do this? And I'm like, sure, because it's about the team, right? The only thing I asked him was if I could still keep my credentials as a sniper, because I was I was doing very well in what we call glass ballistics. So that was kind of an area that I was into within the sniping community.
Can you explain that for the listener? Because I'll have some people Googling it.
Yeah. So glass ballistics, basically, like if you think about it, your average sniper is out there. They're going to be around some type of barrier, generally glass, whether it's a house, a building, a car. Very seldom do you have individuals that are just standing out in the open, right? Just standing there. Not to say it doesn't happen, it does happen, but a lot of times on barricaded people and things like that, you have that glass or that barrier. I was very fortunate to go down in 1998. I was very fortunate to go down to Bryan College, where they were hosting a sniper seminar, and the U.S. Army was there. And I picked that up by attending one of theirs. And it was about like a 2 or 3 hour block. And I came back to Sergeant Newton, the sniper sergeant, talked to him, and he just said, there's not anybody that touches on this. He goes, run with it. And so I've been running with it for like the last 22 years.
Still doing it. Yep,
And still doing it. Yeah. And it basically what it is, it talks about what rounds each sniper has to make their own decision on what round they feel best going through glass.
Well, it's the angle of those rounds and how it throws the shot off.
Right.
So taking a shot, how that will affect the other side of that glass. Where's that round going? Is it going where we intend? Is it hitting exactly what we want to hit? Is that round coming apart and not effective at all terminally? So
Fragment, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that we look at, or the thing that we try to talk about, is if, God forbid, we have a situation where you have a hostage situation, and God forbid the sniper has to eliminate this threat, how is the individual holding the hostage? Because now that you're, if you're driving a straight line, nothing's in front of you, it's generally not an issue. But now that it's hitting a piece of glass or a barrier, as we call it, now that projectile isn't going necessarily in a straight line. So we have to try to learn as much as we can about how different bullets react, because if it goes through and we know that, as a terminology, the projectile tumbles, the bullet tumbles, then that may not be the best round to be using, because it can hit the hostage. If he's in there by himself and he's created a situation where the threat needs to be eliminated, well then, so be it. But when there's a hostage, that's where everything has to be looked at a little differently.
And the different types of glass would make a difference.
Exactly.
Like a windshield as opposed to a house.
Different makeups and layers of the glass, what it's made out of, how thick, where the target is behind the glass. 5 feet is different than 15 feet, and that can make a difference on how that round impacts or affects the subject.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I'm glad we got into this.
Yeah.
Because that way I'm going to probably get a lot of questions otherwise. And I don't know. I don't know this myself. This is not my expertise. I love this.
It's more about the classes and setup. It's to train you what to look for, so that they can go
layman's
out.
Physics. It's a physics class, but it's for us who can understand.
Which is, if you know me, I know nothing about physics.
Yeah.
But I like that sound. Yeah. Hey, I teach physics.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Physics instructor.
Yeah.
I'm going to put that as your title on the
No,
episode.
don't even go there.
Well, you are considering velocity, and you are considering what it's going through, so there are some components to it.
Nah, I'm staying away from that one as far as I can.
All right. We'll give you like an honorary PhD.
There you
in
go.
Physics.
There
How
you
about
go.
that?
Yeah.
So you got it in negotiation.
So Lieutenant asked me if I wouldn't mind doing negotiations. I said, yeah. So that's when I started.
Okay, and your instructors were?
The lead instructors, Raul and Duarte and Raul Marino. Those were kind of like the go-to guys back then. And then you had Kevin Jackson and Christian D'Alessandro.
Okay, I know that. So what kind of training was involved in preparation for that?
Well, first of all, I had to attend a 40-hour basic negotiation school, so I worked with that. Once you get through there, then there's other types of training that we go to try to perfect our skill of active listening. And then you attend conferences, you go to seminars, and that's kind of the way it works out to get to that training that you have. And then, of course, we train just like anyone else would. We set up scenarios. We talk about certain, how are we going to handle this?
You go to negotiator competitions?
Yeah, there are negotiator competitions. That was one thing.
That's really cool. I've never heard that. What is that? What does that entail?
So they're around the country. We usually go to the one here in San Marcos, down in Texas. And we'll bring a team. We weren't bringing teams because, again, for the audience, just to get an understanding of how negotiators work within SWAT, is that most SWAT departments around the country have their entry guys, and negotiators are not part of SWAT. They assist SWAT, or they supplement SWAT, but they're not part as operators. They're a total different entity with a total different chain of command.
Yeah, so you could have an officer, a patrol guy, be
Yes.
a negotiator, or you could have a civilian
Yes.
psychologist
Yes.
coming in. And it actually, LAPD does both. They have
Yeah.
SWAT guys be negotiators, and there's always a psychologist negotiator who is there as well with that SWAT negotiator. That's how they do it. But
Yeah, and that's the concept. You can have teams like that work very well together, very well together. But there's a lot of teams out there that it doesn't work because they're the way they look at each other, they're always bumping heads. These guys.
you mean the SWAT team versus that one
the
negotiator?
Well, the negotiating team.
Sure.
Yeah. The negotiating team, because the negotiators, everyone thinks that, hey, we're here, peacemakers. That's our nickname, our peacemakers. And of course, everyone thinks, the SWAT guys, the intro guys, they just want, beat their chest, go inside, and tear things up. And both are farthest from the truth, right? We go back to when our forefathers thought about that. They said they wanted to be a part of it. So, with that being said, in Danny's job, he's been entry and sniping that. When I'm negotiating in his favor, meaning that what a simple question I might be is like, hey, Bobby, look, Bobby being my person inside, it's like, look, man, we want to end this peacefully. Just turn the light off around, let me know it's okay. That's it, right? Well, when that light comes on, he now has an understanding, one, where he may be, or number two, he may be able to see something. Which is a good thing, right? And that helps him being able to achieve the goal of all of us bringing out somebody that's in a crisis, right?
Yeah, that's you're quarterbacking it in a way for your other operators that are around.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah. We're doing
you're doing something for a reason.
Right,
okay.
Right, and they will let us know if there's something that they want us to try or do, because if they're telling me, hey, this is what there's no second guessing. It's like, yeah, okay, I can get it done because they see something or they know something I don't. Because you got to remember, I'm not necessarily where they're at, so I depend on them as much as I can, and hopefully they depend on me to get that same thing.
So I guess maybe this is something you can further explain, but on Dallas SWAT, our negotiators are SWAT guys.
Yes.
And it's not that they just do negotiations.
Yes.
They are running entry every day on the warrants, going out to the operations, and it's not every operation they negotiate.
Yeah.
It's just if it's their time up in the rotation to do it. And so it's a difference of left hand talking to right hand, which we see with other teams where we have a separate negotiating team from the SWAT teams. Now, there's not that difference. If I'm on a negotiation team, I have my ideas of the priority and the mission, and that could be different from the SWAT guys, and now we're disagreeing on not only what that objective is, but how we're going to get it done. And that's something Dallas does not do. We're all in this together. And we speak the same language and on the same page with everything.
Yeah, and it's not to say that it's a perfect world, because it's not. And like I tell people, other agency, I go, it's a way. It's not the way. It is a way, and it works for us. And other teams will say, well, this works for us. More power to you. If it works, it works. As long as you're getting the job done, that's all it is. But the competition, to get back to that, is that you usually get about 30 teams will come, and there is a Dr. Wayne Mellons, shout out. He is the mastermind of all this, and he puts on a very intensive scenario. And I'm very fortunate to be part of the negotiation team, but I also do judging. So with that, generally he picks up realistic things that have happened in the past from all over the world, and then he'll have a twist to them. And your negotiating team that is up that day, so they split it in 2 days. The first day is usually all hands on deck of classroom presentations. The next 2 days are the competition. So half the group will do the competition of a scenario where, example, I might be a judge and judge one of those teams. And then the next day, my team will be in there, and they will be judging us. So when you're judging these, you have to be an open mind. You have to know the experience of the team. Teams like to be encouraged at times. Other teams, no, let us do it our way, and what they call what do you say? The cards fall where they may.
Yeah.
Right. And then the last days, everyone gets together. We, may talk and whatever, have dinner, and they give out awards to the first place in that.
And they're being judged by other.
Yeah.
Team. Okay,
Most of the
awesome.
judges there's usually about 25 to 30 judges, and we sit there, and when you do them, it's pretty interesting because as a judge, it's good and bad. You learn a lot by watching these other teams. However, you're in there for 8 hours judging,
Right.
and you're listening and watching and doing all, and it gets very long. It's good. It's good training. Our guys, the first time they went, we took 6th place out of 28. The
awesome.
next time we went, we dropped down to 16. So it also goes by how the team works. One thing that we feel is that sometimes the judges that are judging us don't understand our way because they're not SWAT. They don't have that SWAT training where we do. That can hurt us in a competition sometimes.
But help you in real life.
But
setting.
help us in real life.
Yeah.
Like most teams around the country, when they negotiate, they will negotiate with 4 or 5 people. When we go out, we have 2. But we have backup systems in place that can help us fill those other teams, the other members of the team. So you might be an intel person on a negotiation team where I can pick up a phone and call our fusion section, because our fusion section is nothing more that is an intel-based, these are the guys that computer whiz guys that can find anything they want. And so we make a call, we tell them this is what we got. They're already working up everything. So that eliminates one person, but it's being done. You're going to say something, sir?
Not necessarily, but I was just say maybe you can explain that. What are the roles of those? If we have 2 negotiators at the command post, what are those 2 roles, primary and secondary?
Yeah. Okay, so basically a negotiating team, we'll use your traditional negotiating team. You have your primary, the one in the hot seat. You have your secondary, which is the person that listens to the conversation between the primary and the individual. You have your intel person. You have your data guy. Your data guy is usually what they call a whiteboard. He writes on a whiteboard all the information that's being down. The reason why they do that, because in a heated moment, if you're in the hot seat and the individual says something, you have an opportunity to look up there and see it in writing.
Get the name right.
And get the name right.
Get the
phone
date or
name.
whatever they're talking about.
Yeah, whatever
so they
they're
don't get
talking
pissed
about.
off.
Or you hit a subject they don't want to talk about. It's already up there, so it's constantly reminding you, right? And then, of course, most teams will have a liaison between negotiator and SWAT, feeding them information. Well, we don't need that because we all work together. We have one command staff. Our command staff knows exactly what everyone's doing, so there's no reason to be fulfilling that. So usually when we get called out, we use 2 people, your primary and your secondary. If there's a free body, we'll pick up another person and say, hey, we need for you to help us go talk to somebody and find out the true story. But even that in itself is a whole different system because, they may not necessarily know all the questions to ask, and that can create a problem. One of the biggest things that happens, and it's not against patrol or anything, but we'll get called out of somebody that's in a house, and we'll say, did you go around the back of the house to secure it before you called? Yes, we got there. Okay, so this house has been completely surrounded. Yeah. Well, we've learned that we have to say, when you got here, what was the first thing you did? Well, I did this and this and this. Okay. How long did it take for you to get to the back to figure out? Well, it took me about 2 or 3 minutes. That 2 or 3 minutes, that guy can be out the door. And it's no fault for them because it's moving fast, right? For us, we're going like 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah, that guy's probably next city over. And
why do you ask them in that way?
Because generally when they're in a situation where they've got this big fiasco going on, it's slowing everything down, and we're getting them to rethink and slow it down and say, okay, let's look at it this way, right? Okay, I got it. Okay, now we're getting good information. It's not their fault. I mean, it's not, especially if it's a young officer. Older officer, yeah, an older officer may be a little different. But so that's how we would work. I think that was your question. Yeah. Okay.
Going to the training, are you familiar with the stairway model? Active listening, empathy, rapport, influence, behavioral change.
Okay, so active listening is a skill. It is how you hear people, and there are steps within that. So when you're talking about a model, right? When you talk about a model or the stairways, the FBI calls it one way, someone else, another organization may call it some way, or we may call it some way. Active listening is a skill. It's how you communicate, how you let that person know. The rest of it is how you use the model. So the model that we work under is building a rapport. You got to be able to have some type of rapport to talk to somebody. The second part's going to be the precipitating event, which means how did we get here today, right? The next one's going to be focus. Because let's say I'm talking to somebody that says, I lost my job, I lost my car, I lost my wife, they took the dog. Okay. I can't solve all that, right? It's a merry-go-round. And when they get stuck on that merry-go-round, they don't know what they're going to do. They're trying to think of this or this, right? The best example I can say is if you go to your garage, except for Danny's, I can already picture his. But
look at Danny's what?
Yeah. Well, hold on. Yeah, you'll get it. All right. If you go into your average garage, most people can't get a car in it. I'm sure he can put all his cars in it, but most people can't put a car in their garage because there's so many boxes. Or you go to a room, that junk room, right? And you open the door, you look at it, and you just go like, no. I don't want to deal with this, right? I don't know where to begin. Right? Shut it. However, if Joe calls Danny and Danny's garage is that way, but Joe calls Danny and says, hey, Danny, I need help clean my garage. Oh, yeah, I'll be right there. And then when he gets there, he can help Joe clean his garage, right? But he can't go home and do it because it's overwhelming. So when you have somebody that's in that precipitating event, we got to find out what happened today. Then we got to get him to focus in on what's the main thing. What is it? Get off that merry-go-round, put your foot down, and find out what it is that's going on, right? The other example that's crazy is that if you go into you go back to your garage, you're like, okay, I'm going to do this, all right? So you stand there and you take a box out and you put it down. And then as you're going through that box, you're going like, okay, well, this is going to Goodwill, so I'm going to put this over here. Oh, this one here is going over to my Aunt Sue. Oh, this one. And then you turn around, you got 5 boxes, right? And you only had 1 to begin with. And then you're going like, okay, now I got to go back through these again eventually. And it just keeps going on.
You're adding to the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got to put your foot on the ground, right? So that's the first, you get off the merry-go-round. Then once you find out what the focus is, then you can start working on the resources. What can we do to make this a happy ending for everybody? What are we going to be able to do, right? And then you're going to have a plan of action. Now, plan of action is different for different things, depending on what your action is. So that's the model. The active listening skills, they have a whole set of things that we use, paraphrasing, emotional labeling. Now you got, I probably use them every day, and now I'm sitting there trying to think about mirroring, more pies, empathy, motion, all these things come like, and that's how you talk to. So I would ask you guys, when do you think active listening as a communication started?
As soon as, I would imagine.
No.
Before you got there, right?
No. When do you think active listening skills started? Like the development of it?
Well, my girlfriend probably would say I'd never learned that at all, but I would imagine it would as a child.
What do you think?
Probably in the womb.
Womb? Okay. Haven't heard that one, but that's good.
That's Danny.
Yeah, that's Danny. Yeah.
He's thinking outside the box.
Yeah. What do you think, Miss Sarah?
I think with some people they learn it from an early age, and others never learn it and have a harder time with communicating with people in general.
Sure. Well, active listening has started like since biblical times, right? Because the salespeople use it all the time. Salespeople use it all the time for the simple fact that when you tell them you're looking for a red car, the salesman goes, "Oh, you're looking for a red car." Okay, so he's just confirmed. He's repeated back what you just said, which is an active listening skill. Mm-hmm. And then he's going to say, "Hey, yeah," or he may approach you and go, "You look like you're a Corvette guy." Yeah. Well, he's building that rapport with you. How many of you, what I always say cracks me up is, and I like playing with people sometimes because I realize they're doing active listening skills, so I want to see how good they are at it. So I'm not good to talk to people, especially people the spam calls.
Yeah.
I have fun with them. I feel bad for them when I hang up, but quick.
We were just letting my 4-year-old talk to him now.
Yeah.
Yeah, just let him go.
Yeah, just let him. So
he actually gets upset. Oh, is that a telemarketer call? Yeah. I was supposed to talk this.
Yeah, I love it. So I had a problem with my computer one time, and I was calling them up because the screen just froze, and this was way before, most people know how to fix your own now. But I called the guy up, and it was not from. He did not appear to be from America. Mm-hmm. But when he called, it was like, "Hello?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm having problems with my computer." He goes, "So I hear you're having problems with your computer." And I went, "Here we go." And he goes, "Have you tried to do this?" "Yes, I've tried to do that." "Have you?" "Yes, I've tried to do that." He goes, "Okay. So what I hear you say is that this doesn't work when you do this. This is yeah, you're good. And I said, "Okay."
But is that really active listening, or are they reading the script?
Well, they're probably reading the script,
Yeah.
but somebody wrote the script
Sure.
that is active listening.
An active listening model.
Yeah, a model for them or
that's
skills,
funny.
right? And then it gets to the part where, okay, I understand.
Do you?
And I said, "You understand?" And he goes, "Yes." He goes, "I understand." I go, "Do you have a computer in front of you?" He goes, "Yes." I go, "Is it working?" He goes, "Yes." I go, "I have to teach tomorrow. Mine's not working. So therefore, you can't understand how this is happening right now because I'm in a panic mode." And then I went off on him. And I like, "Do you still understand?" He goes, "No, sir."
Yeah.
And I went, so
you use your influence. That was
Yes,
like,
yes,
that's
yeah,
how you
yeah,
influence the situation.
yeah.
So going back, if you could, your first negotiation, how did that go?
Oh, man, Joe, I got to tell you, I've been doing it a long time.
Okay.
Don't remember it?
Don't remember it?
I don't
Really?
Yeah.
So-
So, here's...
So it must have not have gone terrible because it would.
No.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting in someone that is that I'm close with in the negotiating world could see that I was having a hard time one time, and he asked me. He asked me how many I'd lost. Or I told him. I said, "Yeah, it's about 6. I think between 5 and 6 people. I think if I really thought about it." And he said, "How many have you saved?" And I said, "I have no clue."
Right.
And he said, "Well, maybe that's what you should be thinking about." And I went, "Ooh, touche." I go, "That's a good one on that one." So I give him credit for that. So, yeah, obviously it didn't go bad because I was.
All right, so then out of those 5 or 6,
Mm-hmm.
is there one of them you can talk about and kind of
Yeah.
talk us through what
Yeah.
is a bad one for you
So,
and how did it evolve that
I
way?
think a bad one, and Danny and I talked a little bit about it. So the first 2 people I lost was on national TV when they were filming Dallas SWAT. And at the time, I didn't think about it till after it was all said and over and done. But the first one I lost, which is really, really crazy, he had committed a murder, and he was barricaded inside of a hotel. And ironically, they were both hotels, too. He was barricaded inside of a hotel. We were able to make contact. I had great support. We used, at that time, because it was a small structure, I was able to have all the other senior guys because I was a junior guy. So you had Kevin Jackson, Joe Guzman, Raul Marino, and they were kind of like my backup on talking and give me clues and things like that. But he wanted to talk to his girlfriend, and we found out that his girlfriend wanted nothing to do with him. Nothing to do with him, even in this situation. I even tried to talk to her, and she's like, I'm not interested. He's going to do what he's going to do. And I'm like, oh, man, that's kind of crazy. So we talked, and we tried to find out. He knew that he was going to jail. He had a daughter, a young daughter, a child at the time, like baby. And he was talking about her a little bit, and we tried to work that into the picture of most people think that when you go to jail, life's over. But in reality, life's over if you choose for it to be over, right? There are other options that you have when you're in jail, meaning you can still be a great father.
Rehabilitation, though, and a goal.
Well, I don't even
to
look
get
at that.
out,
I don't even look at that. I'm just talking about when someone says, I'll never see my kid again because I'm going to jail. I said, no, that's your decision. You're making that decision. You can easily change that. You can go see somebody. You can go talk. You can go talk to them. They can send you pictures. They can do all this kind of stuff nowadays. I said, it's what you make of it. You got to work for it, but you can do it, right? So with that being said, that's something that we tried to use. And it seemed to be working. Everything was working. And I know that we were able to talk to him. He had a pistol. And I told him, he said he was going to kill himself. And we figured it out. Even in the show, I wrote down, this is going to be suicide. So I was already being prepared for it. And I remember telling him that.
What made you think that?
By his mannerism, by how he was talking, and it just didn't sound good.
Yeah, more on that. How he's talking. Yeah. Where are some of the things being said? As in desperation, or as in resolved and at peace?
Thank you. When we get to a part where somebody's getting to that point, they lose all hopeless. They're all hope. It's hopelessness, and you're trying to find anything that's going to give them some hope. And when everything's negative, those are the signs that start coming into it. And it's very much like when someone's talking. If I'm talking and Danny and I are talking and all of a sudden I just start not talking as much, or I start talking low.
That's the sign. That's one of the signs.
That could be a sign.
Yeah.
He's starting to go down, right? But the funny thing about suicide is, at what point do you think somebody would kill themselves? So I'd ask you guys.
I would think emotionally, desperation or hope. Just there's nothing. I would feel that there was nothing could make. However, the feeling I'm having, nothing I could do that could get me out of that rut, make me feel better, or fix the situation that got me there in the first place. That's what I would feel.
When they feel so much pain, they don't know how to make it end.
So actually, you guys are pretty much close, right?
Beating around the bush.
If you think a trough, but let's, for the viewer's sake, to imagine a V, the letter V. So if you look at the left side of the V, the emotions are, life's okay, and then it starts going down the V towards the bottom, and as it gets towards the bottom, that's where you start getting your maladaptive management, which basically
poor coping skills.
Yeah, coping skills. Yeah, so you get to that part where you drink, drugs, infidelity, whatever it is. You start having those. You get all the way down to the bottom, and you would think that's where it happens, but actually, it's not where it happens. It's when you start going back up the V, is where it happens.
Why is that?
I was going to ask you. Okay. Why do you think it is?
Is it because you feel yourself getting out of you've gotten so used to the risky behavior and the drinking, and you're getting out of it? Is it the feeling of you can't go any further, that's as good as it's going to get?
Or you've found a way out of it finally? And that's your plan now.
Where I'm going at is that you have to have energy to kill yourself.
And when you're down so low, you have
You
no energy.
have
to
no
do it.
energy.
Left.
You got nothing.
But at that point, when you're down so low, are you usually planning?
That's
to
when you
do
try
it?
and
You could be
catch 'em.
you could be planning. You
But
could be
it's
doing
not
that.
going to have action really because you're
Right.
totally empty. You're
You're
depleted.
empty. You're down there, and you could have the gun there and go like, I don't feel like killing myself. It isn't until you start looking and going like, now you're starting to go up, and you're going like, this is it. You're starting to slowly come up, and you're going like, well, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. And you're starting to going up, and you're starting to go up, and as you're starting to go up, that's when it's real dangerous. And that's the part that I was seeing in him, is he was starting to go back up. So a conversation might be something like, if we're talking, I would be, if I was the individual in crisis, I'd be saying like, well, nothing works. I just here. You know what, Joe? Everything's going to be okay. I'm going to make it through this. Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry. Everything. So when it changed from here to here, that's when you're on that edge. And that's the part that you're trying to work at, because it just goes from 0 to racing speed. Not all the times, but generally they have to have that energy, that boost. And unfortunately, when you have someone that's in that boost, you can see it. If somebody's jumping off a bridge or getting ready to, they have signs that they start to do it. And when I start seeing those signs, those are things that I realize, okay, we're in that area there. If we can just get them beyond that, then we have a better chance. Someone that shoots himself, generally they're to a part where they take a quick breath. They look at it and they go like, boom, because they have to get that energy to do it.
Yeah, huffing themselves up. Or
Someone that shoots
You
drugs,
said the energy. That's their way of getting
psyched up.
Yeah.
Okay.
They get psyched up to do
And
it.
is that what this person did on the show?
From what I remember, I think part of it was negotiations were going well. He actually threw out. We were able to talk about it, and we came up with a plan that it was a good idea. I said, if you're talking about killing yourself, then basically you just need one round, right? There's no reason to hurt anybody else. You just need one round. And he had a bag of ammunition. He threw it out the door because, well, I got to be careful because there are some. I mean, I've gone this far. There are some things that I don't like to get out because I don't want someone to think.
You don't
about
want
it.
trade secrets.
I don't want trade secrets, but he was able to get the ammunition out.
Okay.
And I thought that was a great thing. We made some good rapport in that. On the other part to it, sadly he ended up killing himself, and that was the first one.
Really?
Yeah. And the odd thing about that is that 4 months ago, I received a phone call. And it was this lady that called. I said, yeah, how can I help you? She goes, are you JD? And I said, yes. She goes, are you JD that was on the TV show? And I'm like, uh-oh. Yes. Can I talk to you for a second? Sure. Do you remember the hotel, and do you remember so-and-so? Yeah, and I'm wondering, where's this going? And she says, I'm the daughter. And I went, ooh. I just went like. So I remember looking at everybody in the office, and they didn't know what was going on. I went, I got to get up. So I got up, got my phone. I called her back on my cell phone, and I walked outside. And she goes, you were the last person to talk to my dad, and I don't know him. Can you tell me anything about him? I'm like, And so, like Danny knows, I'm an emotional guy. I mean, I don't know why. I just am. I'm probably the most emotional SWAT guy you'll ever meet. I cry at everything. But I know that it was it took me off guard. And she goes, I asked her, I said, so how are you doing? She goes, well, remember the girlfriend? The girlfriend
Didn't want
to do anything. So she had no one to talk to. And now she's like 16, 17. And we started talking. I said, this is my phone number. You call me if you ever need anything. And I said, she sent me pictures of her new baby and her boyfriend and all that. And I'm saying, you need something, you call me. I mean, that's the tie to it. And, here, I don't remember when it was. It was 2015 maybe. It was a long time ago. But it's interesting because that one's always stuck with me. And she called once or twice, and then we just kind of went away. But, I mean, I won't forget that one. It's just like...
So she needed closure. She needed some
closure.
kind of closure.
And she was very good about it. She was like, I'm not here to bother you. I'm not here. She goes, I'm just looking for closure. I don't know anything about my dad. So I told her some things about her dad. And one of the things that at the time his girlfriend was the one that didn't want him was a professional dancer, we'll call it. And we were laughing. And, it became guy talk. And that's the hard part that people don't understand is that when you start talking just like Joe and I or Danny, and we're just talking, it gets to that point.
That's part of the rapport, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's camaraderie. You're joking around a little bit, and you're doing this and doing that and everything. And then when it just, happens that quick, you're just like, what the just happened, right? But in this case, I said, well, I have to admit, in my younger days, I may have ventured out into that area to see the professional dancers. Yeah. And I said, you know what? I said, I don't know about you, but I would think that you and I just slip out of here and go get a couple of drinks and talk about everything going on here. And he goes, wouldn't that be great? And I'm like, buddy, you come out, I'll figure some way out that we can do that. I don't know how. Not that it would, I'd figure something out, right? Because we don't like to do things that we're not allowed to do, right? Command staff's going to say, no, they ain't happening that. But, I can become very resourceful in thinking of ways to make something happen, right? We joked around a bit. And then when things started to happen, I realized that, it's not going to go well.
So did you feel at some point that there was a way out and it was going to have a good outcome, and then you said you wrote down suicide?
That was in the middle in the very beginning. Okay. I wrote down.
Okay,
and then,
wow.
Because it's a roller coaster. It's up and down, and probably that's why I'm so emotional, because it goes up and down, up and down, up and down, constantly up and down. And just when you think it's going to work, it doesn't, right? So it's like Peyton Place for those that...
And you said that was your first one.
Soap opera.
Yeah, that was your first one that you had lost.
Yeah, that was the first one I lost.
When at that moment when it happened, you said you just said, what the fuck? What just happened?
Yeah.
How did that feel to you personally? You're an emotional guy.
Yeah.
What were you thinking at that moment, if you can remember?
Well, I got 3 great support guys.
Okay.
The guys that I told were there, and everybody wants to come up and say, hey, nice job, or you did a good job, or whatever, or you did the best you can. And that's fine and dandy. It carries you for a little while, but then you really start thinking, and you just can't help but Monday quarterback yourself, 2 years later, 1 year later, whatever, a couple months later, and you can't do that. So, I tell, when I speak, I'm very big on, and probably a little off the record here, but when I speak to other agencies or conferences and things like that, the last thing I tell them is I'm a huge supporter of the ATO by means of I promote it. And by promoting it, that's a way for officers to get rid of baggage that they're carrying. So I have probably had a counselor for, let's say I started in 1999. By the year 2001, I figured no. So I was smart enough to realize. So if anything bothers me, I call my counselor and I talk to them to get through it, whatever it is, because you never know when it's going to come around and hit you. You'll be going and something hits you. So I'm a huge fan of that. And, if something ain't right, I go get it checked out. I've been doing this game a long time. And because of that, I think that's what's kept me going, because I try not to have a lot of luggage.
But you're self-aware of it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's how you know what you're doing. You know the emotions you're taking, and you're basically a human sponge in so many different times.
Right.
And it's gone great. Even the ones that have gone great were an emotional roller coaster, right? And then you have the ones that you said, the 5 or 6 that you have lost, and you those you'll never forget those. But you have to go for maintenance.
Oh yeah,
right? To
Absolutely.
To a therapist.
Yeah. And I encourage you, man. For when you're in that area, suck it up and go. Right. Mm-hmm. That's it. It's like getting a physical. I go every year to get a physical. Make sure I may call my counselor. Hey, I got a yearly visit. I want to come in. We'll go sit down and have coffee someplace at Starbucks. We'll talk, get things out of the way, whatever's bothering me.
Because that could be a way for you may think everything's fine, and you've seen this in other individuals.
Oh yeah,
but somebody on the outside looking in can see something, notice something that you weren't aware of, and point it out to you, and then you go, "Oh shit, they're right."
Oh yeah,
right.
People don't realize when they're in crisis sometimes. They think they're under control, but they don't have it all together. Not that they can't function, but they can function, they can do everything, but they're carrying that luggage around, right? I remember one time I walked in, and she said something about luggage. She goes, "It looks like you're carrying a suitcase." I said, "No, I brought the suitcase." I said, "The U-Haul's packed outside."
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, she got to look at that. So,
how has negotiation evolved since you began, and has your style evolved with all the different experiences? I'm sure it was learned by trial and error, but has the negotiations tactics and the direction you go, has that changed since you've been doing it?
Yes, tactics have changed, but I would also say that the way active listening is doesn't change. Active listening is always active listening. Using those skills, it's always the same. The majority. Excuse me.
Can you talk about another critical incident?
Yeah. Go ahead. Were you going to say something, sir?
No, any positive one or
Yes.
one that sticks out that's great.
Yeah. I was actually on my way to the academy to instruct some mental health, because it kind of goes along with mental health.
Of course
right?
it does, yeah.
It was a young lady that was going through some bad times, and Joe Guzman, he was out there, did a great job. We worked very well. Joe and I worked very well together. But she was on the bridge getting ready to jump, and she's pregnant. And she doesn't want the baby. Could care less about the baby. So are we dealing with one person, or are we dealing with two? Now we're dealing with two bodies, right? Because you got a baby.
It's almost a hostage. It's a hostage negotiation situation.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Because you don't want her to jump, because obviously that fall would definitely, well, I won't say that, well, it wouldn't be good for the baby. We did a lot of talking. Joe's very good at what he does. We piggyback off each other. We got to a point where we were able to calm her down, and we were able to get her off the bridge, or off the rail, and she was doing okay talking to us. And believe it or not, a truck went by and said, "Jump." And she got back up on top of the edge, and her demeanor totally changed. She goes, "See, I told you nobody cares."
Did you feel from that got what you had already built to that point?
I wanted to.
It got torn down, and you had to start over. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. So what that happened, And can you just further describe and paint the listener a picture of what happened after the truck goes by and basically shot your wheels off?
It was like starting all over again, because now that report's there. She's starting to think a little bit better, making some better choices, and trying to get this taken care of. And then this guy just, whether he's joking or serious, whatever, but he just screwed up.
He didn't realize what he was dipping his toe into. I'd imagine. Spinning an
I don't even know if I want to say that. Man, I was
like
so
you always
mad.
say, Joe just wants to be part of the problem, just for the attention and just
And just like, I know Joe and I looked at each other like, and I was already on it. I said, stop it. I didn't care how long it would take us to get her down, but he and I were going to have a serious talk. But he had already made it through the line there. But we were able to get her to come down, and that was a good feeling.
When you got back into it, how did y'all have to rebuild it, and how did you finally get her to where she would come back down?
You have to start all over again, building rapport.
Did you take a different approach at that point after she had already?
The approach worked, and the fact that she was listening to us was one thing. And there are times when, she was pretty much on ground zero, ready to do it. She was already up, body was on the top rail. The only thing that was holding her was a little pole for the light on the bridge. That's the only thing. And that's one thing that I give Joe credit as well as myself. I got to pat myself on that, is that even with that going on, Joe and I never flinched. We don't flinch, because the minute that we start getting excited can it possibly elevate the situation. Joe's just like smooth. Like, he's an idiot. That guy there, he was an idiot, blah, blah. Just finish telling me what you were telling me. Just come back, right? So there's other things that we would do but she came down. With jumpers, I'm a huge hugger, because that roller coaster ride, that is my way of, I have my own little, self-healing stuff. So that's one of them. When you get a jumper that's ready to jump from or kill themselves, that's, from police officers to ex-command staff to kids, adults, whatever. When that releases, I don't care what their problem is. And the guys are good about it. They jab, but the guys are, I feel, at least understand it. But military, when you get them to come off a bridge, it is amazing that when you hug them, they all break down and cry.
It's like a release.
Yeah,
from
they
that.
all break down and cry. And that's pretty emotional. Not that I cry per much, but I carry that with me when I leave, because that's my feeling. If they cry when it's like the old school in patrol. If you write a ticket to somebody and they say thank you, you've done your job well, right? I'm a firm believer that if I get this person to cry because they're releasing that stress that they've had, then I did what I was supposed to do. And that's a good day for me.
And getting a hug is something that you just prevented them from. They were in a position where they were not ever giving any hugs again.
Right.
And
right.
You're the first one they could give a hug to.
And I'm telling you, from all the ones that we've dealt with, was a young Marine. He was a good-sized kid, and just cried like a baby. And I'm like, that's all right, buddy. That's what I'm here for, right? So when I have those happen, that just means that they're on their way to at least getting some help. And we try to make sure they get that way. So that's good stuff.
What would you say about a negotiator would surprise the listener most? Like a quality or just a...
Okay, so here's a good one.
All right.
Would you rather say, he may already know this, Danny, but for your person that doesn't, wouldn't, is would you rather have a hostage or non-hostage situation? And if so, what would the difference be? Do you know this one? Okay.
Well, with a hostage, you have another life that you're trying to save. You're trying to save both. I believe the ultimate goal is both lives to come out of there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough one. I mean,
Versus a non-hostage?
a non-hostage, you have one person that you're trying to get out. You're trying to rescue, right, and change their mind. But
Okay.
but when you factor in a hostage, there's another individual that whatever tactic you use or anybody that's on the team uses, you're having to account for too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as a SWAT guy, I just don't want a hostage.
You don't want a hostage, yeah.
I mean, obviously, I don't want an innocent person
Yeah.
Yeah, an innocent
getting
person.
hurt. So, yeah, if it's someone who's going to do that to themselves, that's where you come in, JD. You're the one who's
Yeah, well,
compassionate.
it's also non-hostage. So if I was to throw in one word, you might be able to figure it out. Non-hostage / victim. Would that change it?
Non-hostage / victim. Yes. So you're in your mind. Let's say that there's a victim there. They were just victimized, like you're on the phone with a murderer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine. And I'm not a negotiator. I've actually gone through one of your classes in the
Oh,
CRT.
did-
Yeah,
oh.
it was great.
Was it okay? Did I do
No,
all right?
you're great. No, you're great. I think just human nature would change your mind about that person in there if they committed a heinous crime.
Okay.
I mean,
Miss Sarah?
I think with a barricaded person or a non-hostage person, they're still suffering. So you have one person to relate to, one person to connect with, and I would think it's a more narrow in terms of situation that you're trying to resolve. Where when you bring the second person in, yes, it could look like you just have the other person that you want to save, and the person who wants to do whatever they want to do is going to do whatever it is. But I think at the end of the day, it's really that's the person who needs more attention than when.
You want to comment on that, sir? Okay. So think of this. When hostage became back in the medieval days, right? It's used for bargaining. Hostage is used for bargaining.
Leverage.
Right? So if Bobby, poor Bobby, I use Bobby all the time. You got Bobette and Bobby. But let's say Bobby goes in and robs a bank and he comes out. Popo is there, right? Police officer, sorry. He comes running out, runs back in. What do you think his ambition is? What's his goal?
Freedom.
To get away, right?
any avenue he can to get away.
Right.
Yeah.
So therefore, he will use hostages as bargaining chips. If I give you water, you give me one person. Okay, right? I want a car. I'll get your car, give me two people, right? So you're using them as bargaining chips. I mean, there's no other, I'm trying to be nice, but
It's reality.
it's reality.
Yeah,
You're using
yeah.
people as bargaining chips, right? And God forbid, I don't want that on anybody. So you're in that point, he needs you to some degree for demands, all this. He needs you to help him get away. Now, what do you do when Bobby comes home and finds out that Bobette has been sleeping with his best friend? Domestic violence comes into play, and now all of a sudden, she's able to call 911. We show up. If SWAT gets to play, we come out. What does Bob need from us?
I'm not sure he even knows. He just wants to feel better, but he doesn't really.
He doesn't need anything from us
Huh.
because the fuel is in the house. He has what he wants. She's there. So that is a victim. And we deal with that more than we do with the true hostage or the hostage that's being bargaining chips.
Yeah.
Do you want water? I don't need water. Do you need anything from us? No, I got what I want. She's right here next to me. And that's the difference of when you're trying to talk to somebody. And most police departments deal with that way more than they do with the bank robber. And that's why your A game, that's where you get a lot of your stuff, is because we're dealing with those. We're trying to realize that this guy's in crisis, and we have to get him to think, right? We got to be able to build rapport with him. We got to find out what caused it. We got to figure out, okay, what's the main cause of this, right? We got to figure out resolutions. Then we have a plan of action. Plan of action just basically means, Bobby, when you come out, this is what we're going to do. This is what we'd like for you to do, this, right? And that all comes into play. And however the SWAT guys or whoever is how they want them to come out and that, I don't care, as long as he's committed to me that says, hey, he's coming out, they'll adapt to it. Whether front door, back door, window, I don't care. If he's coming out, we're in good shape.
Wow. So I want to get into your the helpline.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that at all?
So we have to get some training done. So we will reach out to entities. It could be anything from answering telephone lines or doing some type of training to assist in our active listening skills. So when you get proficient at it, you use active listening skills all the time. Like I use it all the time. I can use it on our traffic stop. I can use it, whenever. But you practice it because you can lose it just like anything else. You have to keep practicing it. And with that, that's how we get training. You can call Pure Line, P-E-R, Pure Line, and we can help that by officers coming in. I mean, I'm very blessed that officers feel like they can approach me and talk about stuff. And I don't mind it. There comes a point in time where, that rapport. So when an officer comes to me and talks about stuff going on, I don't worry about it because they're getting rid of that luggage. And if they won't get rid of it with me, that's fine. No one generally knows about it. I don't talk about it because that's part of the rapport, right? They got to feel comfortable to come on and talk to you and say, hey, I just want to vent. Have at it. Go for it. And then I just let them go for it.
And that's to refine your skills. That's no different, like Danny going out to the range and practicing over and over.
If somebody wants to come to
your mind sharp.
Yeah, it keeps my mind sharp. And I'm not doing it for me.
Yeah,
but it helps me.
Yes, it helps
because they're
you.
talking to me
Right.
and they're getting information and things like that.
Is there anything that you would want to see improved or changed within the way things are functioning now?
In negotiations?
Yeah.
Um,
or within the training of negotiators?
With the training of negotiators, I think we're doing a pretty good job. I really do. I think, the overall community of negotiators from all over the world, they're constantly trained. They're trying to find the technology is something that's been around. So like myself, I've been around for a while. So the younger negotiators that we have, they already know this stuff, right? I don't even know how to type and hunt and peck, right? These kids now do it with their thumbs as fast as they can. And so that's something that I'd have to learn to be better at. But even in technology, if you're typing something, you're not getting an emotion. And so I'd like, I think, the younger negotiators to really dive into learning those emotions and how to deal with them. It's hard to do when you're doing it through texting, but that may be the only way you can talk to somebody is through texting. So you can't ever get enough training. You just can't. I don't know if that really answered your question. I think we're in the right direction.
How many negotiators are in the department? Because you said before about the 2-man team. So I'm just curious, like when you mentioned earlier about when someone's turn is up.
Right.
So I'm just wondering how often or what the rotation would be like.
Because we do it a little differently. We have 4 primary negotiators, and then we have 4 backup secondary. So if I was to ask you, Danny, in the sniper world, what would be your impression of who's the senior guy, the shooter or the observer?
In the sniping team?
Yeah.
It kind of depends on the operation, but I mean, yeah, it depends on the operation.
Okay, I'll give you
Yeah,
that.
and it depends on that and the weapon platform and kind of what we're dealing with.
So generally, as a rule of thumb, your senior guy might be the more experienced guy, but based on his answer, he's correct in that too.
Yeah, like I say,
beca-
as a senior guy, maybe we'd try and get the newer guy on the gun more experience, and we can sit back and assist.
And the same thing goes with negotiation, right? It has been very difficult for me to let the new guys in because it's not they're not doing good jobs. It's just my mind is thinking very. I'm like 3 pages ahead of them, and they're like on page 1, and I'm like, so it's hard for me to let go. But I'm getting to the part now where I'll be retiring sometime. To let that go and let those guys do it. They're very capable of doing it. We got a good set of guys. I just wish I could keep them more often because they get tagged with other jobs, and that's just which is a lot on their plate.
Yeah, we're just low on manpower to where guys are taking so many hats on.
Yeah. So.
And if you don't have as much time with them and training and experiences, that takes away from their skills and development of their skills, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
You've been on since 1985.
Yes, sir.
You've been in Dallas SWAT since 1993.
Yes.
What is next for you in your career with Dallas PD? What are some goals you have?
So I'm telling folks because people want to know when I'm leaving, and I'm telling folks that there's 2 goals personally that I think would be pretty cool to meet. It means nothing to no one else other than just myself. Is number 1, I'd like to be in the top 10 of overall seniority of the department, not by rank because I'm low on the ground on rank, but I'd like to be within the top 10 over seniority. I'm number 11.
Okay.
So that kind of scares me.
What's your badge?
5282.
5282. Danny 8834.
Yeah.
I'm 7482. Yeah.
I wrote that one down a lot.
Did you?
On reports.
Yes, you did.
So that would be my next gig. One of my classmates is number 10, and I'm trying to push her out. So I'm like, you need to leave. And there's
You're giving your influence.
I'm giving
Yeah.
influence.
Yeah.
Subliminal messages.
If she gets pushed out and you're number 10, will you leave then?
Well, now
What's
that
her
falls
name?
into the
What's her phone number?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hello, Sheila Green.
Shout out Sheila.
Shout out to Sheila, right?
Sheila, leave
Yeah.
so you can get a goal.
The next one is to hit my 40 years, and I'm at 37.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do the math.
Yeah. He's figuring it out.
Yeah, look at him smile.
I just don't know how you're staying here that long. That's amazing.
Yeah. So that'll give me. Well, you got to realize where I'm at now. I'm not the guy that goes through the door anymore. I'm in a different job, but I'm still attached with.
Just
him.
kind of briefly explain what that job is.
So
you're on Dallas SWAT.
Yeah.
But you are in.
I'm I'm a retired entry guy.
You're in TESS.
I'm in TESS, and we are the old guys. So it used to be that you couldn't even get into our office unless you were 50. Once you turn 50, then we might look at you. But as a matter of fact, most of the guys down, with the exception of one, is he's 48, I think. But we've all have time on the department. Our job is to assist I keep calling them draggers, sorry, the entry guys to go in and do the, beat down the door, hostage rescue, all that kind of stuff. So we drive the vehicles for them to get there, help them out any way. Nowadays, I don't necessarily need to. Back then, I would, use a ram and slam it. Now we have a ram on the truck where I can drive the truck through the door, which makes it a lot easier. We try to keep up with all their administrative needs. So if Danny needs a certain type of equipment, he'll go to all the snipers, talk to them. They'll decide what they want to come up with. They'll make sure they're all good with it and then give it to me. And then I'll either use the company they want to use for, or I'll find something that will be comparable to them and then work it up the chain. So now I work behind a desk, unless we call for an operation where I'll either assist in negotiation, drive, or whatever they need for us to do. It's a good way for older guys to retire gracefully versus just, you're here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah, which that happens in this profession.
Yeah.
At any unit, right?
Yeah.
All right. I got one final question I want to ask you.
Go for it.
What is the feeling of when you have spent hours talking to an individual and going through the entire roller coaster of potential suicide? I'm saving a life. I'm saving multiple lives. Mm-hmm. Back to suicide. To I have solved this situation and this person is remaining alive and they're walking out. And how many times are you face to face with that person after the incident is over? And how does that feel?
So I learned a long time ago, and that's a good question. I learned a long time ago, with the exception of one or two, I've made contact with the individual. Generally, as a rule of thumb, I disconnect. I've done my part. They're going to get help, and that chapter's closed. Because I don't want to get caught up into trying to go back and figure out all these stuff of all the issues, because I'll be the type that will try and help them. And it's better for me if I just cut it off. They're home, they're getting help, and leave it at that. Just kind of turn it off.
Well, that's your way of protecting yourself.
Sure. Because eventually, we get repeat offenders, meaning that you've had people that have attempted suicide more than once, and how you talk to them, you have to be mindful of that. And so with that, I'd rather start. I remember what worked. We'll try that. And if it doesn't work, then I got to figure something out on the fly. But yeah, I kind of just turn it off.
Okay. No, I see. I can see why you would do that.
Yeah. No disrespect to them.
Right.
I want everybody to go home. Right.
You have a job to do. Well. Your job is done. Your task is complete, mm-hmm. and it's time to move on to potentially the next. Right.
Yeah, because there's always another.
There's always another one waiting in line.
Yeah.
And you've given so much knowledge to not only the SWAT unit and the history of the SWAT unit, and especially when it comes to negotiation, you have taught CRTs, you've taught patrol, you've gone around the country and given this knowledge for the patrol officers. What would be one of the biggest things you could tell them when they're first on the scene, and how to deal with negotiations, because they're the ones holding it down until y'all get there? What would you tell them? What would be something that you could, the listener, because we have a lot of young listeners mm-hmm. that are in patrol, what could you tell them that would help them if they arrive to the scene first when it comes to the negotiation to hold it down?
Remain calm.
Okay.
Just remain calm. Listen to what they're telling you. And, one of the first things about active listening is mirroring or reflecting back. What happened? Well, this happened and this happened. Okay, so what I hear you say is this happened, this happened, and this happened. So that person, you're building that rapport so that they feel as though you're actually hearing, because it's about hearing what they're saying. Not judging them, not doing anything, not trying to fix it, not anything like that.
They're being heard.
They're just listen to what they have to say and just really, it's a conversation.
JD, Thank you so much. Thank you for your service with the department in the city of Dallas, and thank you so much for all that you've done for the DPA, the ATO. And I'm glad you mentioned that before. You love giving back because you see a need for our officers and their need for confidential counseling and self-maintenance, because you yourself, you practice that. You see a need for it. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much for your service.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, JD.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Down when you're lonely, I'll pull you up. Life leaves you heavy when the going gets tough. I'll be your shoulder, together we'll run up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far, for the gold and the blue, I'll never give up on you.